Greetings, people. Little story time here. But the reason why is I hear, certain accounts of certain people actually encountering Jesus and having a supernatural experience, and this solidified their faith in Jesus Christ. And I'm gonna explain something to you, and this is a realization I had. There was a point in time where I was really trying to work with the fairy kingdom, right? And I was trying so hard that I would actually set up everything in the garden, because I garden, and I've got everything set up in the garden to basically cater to these fairies. I would set up homes, I would set up the plants, I would set up certain essences, certain things around my garden, because I was kind of fascinated, because I was gardening, about fairy kingdoms and the elves and mushrooms and that kind of stuff. So I had everything set up in that way, and my mindset was so ingrained in that I was actually even listening to certain binaural beats that would cater to the fairies and whatnot. And then there was one night where I fell asleep and I was having a dream, and I was in my garden and I was having a dream about my dog. But here's the thing though, this was not a regular dream. This was a very lucid dream like no other, except I wasn't aware I was in a dream. When I say lucid, I'm talking about it was so clear that it's hard to differentiate whether it was a dream or not unless I became aware it was a dream. All right? Now, I'm looking at my dog scratching this log, and I'm telling my dog, hey, 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 because he was like relentlessly scratching this log, and I'm thinking there's a raccoon or some shit in there that if it was one of those animals, it would have came out and bit his ass, and then I would have fucking had to take my dog to the vet. So I didn't want to have to go through that. So I'm trying to stop my dog, and normally he listens to me, but if I say "Pooey," or like any kind of like harsh noise, even a like that, he stops. He's very obedient. But in this instance, he wasn't listening to me, and I got mad, so I came down the steps, and he did not stop. He looked at me and he kept scratching this log. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, some like ball of light exploded out of this log, and now my dog backed up. And from there, I saw a golden orb just come out of it. But here's the thing though, I knew it was a fairy, but it didn't look like a fairy. It didn't look like none of the fairies that were in the movies. It didn't have wings. It wasn't a pretty little fairy. It was nothing like that. It was just a gold ball that came out of this. But I instantly, for some reason, knew it was a fairy. That's the crazy thing. So I said, oh, wow. You know what I'm saying? But now, as that was happening, some energy from my feet, exactly from my feet, started to rise up all the way up to my head. And it was the most amazing feeling I've ever had. But I knew it was a fairy. So I get up now. And I said, and the whole thing is, as that was happening, when the energy went up, I went like that, and I was up. All right. Now I said, wow, what accounted to that actually happening, right? And it's so much in the fact that your mind will find evidence to make anything you want real. And here's the thing, there's people who said that they were in jail and they had a supernatural encounter with Jesus Christ. You see, the whole thing is, these people are, and it can happen in any kind of way. It can happen in a traumatic instant, like an accident or whatnot. But this person said he was in jail, and a couple of people, I've heard accounts of this happening, but they were in jail, and then they had a supernatural encounter with Jesus Christ. You see, you're in such a low state at some moment in time that you're trying to find light to better your situation, right, outside of yourself. And your mind, because you're in that traumatic of a state, is creating a ritual without even knowing it. And you may have a supernatural encounter with a Jesus Christ figure. And this is the thing though. It's not to say that it wasn't a real experience. It's a very real experience. Just like the fairy that came out of that log for me. I don't even think it was a fucking dream. It was an incident that was happening. It was a happening, to be honest to you. I just wasn't in my body, because in this physical realm, you're not going to see a fairy. You can only do it from a different dimension. So it would require me to be in a different vibratory state. So I was in a different vibratory state where it required my body to be unconscious, because in this physical realm, this realm is only bound by the laws and limits of nature, which is fine. And anything's possible because it manifests here in this physical realm as something, in a paradigm shift happening to you. You know what I'm saying? You've seen people that were in one state, all of a sudden you see them in a different state overnight. But it was a change of mind, and your mind found evidence to solidify a real instance for you to actually experience it here in this physical realm, because it wasn't bound by the laws and limits of nature, right? So somehow somebody could become a billionaire overnight, or you could become an all-knowing guru overnight, and it's just an awakening, right, of something that was already within you. You just didn't realize it until you came to full realization when it happened to you. So now all of a sudden you living here as an all-knowing being. You're living as, somebody who's basically tapped into what, somebody who's supernatural would be considered supernatural, except you're not going to be flying, but you could fly over certain situations. You could basically bulldoze over certain situations and scenarios or obstacles and stuff like that. So check this out. Here's the important thing about this story, okay? When the person was in jail, when the person was in jail, they had a traumatic experience. They're trying to find the light, and all of a sudden, they found it to what the collective know as the light of the world, or the one that's good, because you're in a bad situation, right? So now all of a sudden you manifest a scenario that says you are having this encounter with Jesus Christ. The fairies the same way. All right, the fairies to me was a very real experience. So your mind makes real whatever it is that you believe in. I had a friend who says that he got into a car accident and that something hugged him in that instance. But who is to say he was conscious, right? He probably went unconscious, but that scenario happened, and it did happen, right? It's a real thing, but because it was a traumatic experience, he'll tie that to the experience of Jesus Christ. See, me, for example, when I meditate, I've had certain experiences where I was grabbed by my feet, all right? And I was pulled, and I noticed, I was aware when my body fell asleep, and the moment that my body just went, I feel it going to sleep. All of a sudden, I felt something pull my legs from my ankles. They grabbed my ankles, pulled me, and all of a sudden my body was going in like a wheel. And then all of a sudden it got propelled up. And in that propelling, I felt that as clear and lucid as it could be. If I felt the wind, but it wasn't like a G-force. It was more like magnetism. It was like a magnetic pull. And I was just going up until, it just kept happening where I was just going up, that I just decided to just open my eyes, and I was like in my couch, but I was aware of the whole thing lucidly. You know what I'm saying? But the moment that I started to put too much anxiety or too much, what do you call that? Impatience of me, where I'm going to go, because I just kept going up. That impatience is a human reaction. So it woke my body up, and that's why I was already aware that I was in my body, right? Because I was going up, I was out of my body. But the moment that emotion came on, that feeling of me going up just kind of like diminished, and I just was back in my body. So now I was just experiencing nothing, and then I just opened my eyes and I was there in my couch. You know what I'm saying? So the whole point to this is that your mind makes everything real. Your mind, your body doesn't know the difference between a real or a fake experience. Okay, but the whole thing is that the more you ingrain it, your mind will try to find evidence to support what it is that you're trying to ingrain in it. Okay, and it'll happen through certain experiences where you will actually manifest a certain experience. It's just like you're watching a scary movie, you fall asleep, and you might have an immediate nightmare after that. If I'm going about my day and I have something dramatic that's happening, I may dream about it when I go to bed that night. Right? So you're just processing. It's like almost like you eat food and your body's processing that food. So you're processing the information that you went through the day, and your subconscious will communicate with you in symbolism to actually, tie you to the experience that you had, or decode the experience that you had. Or it could be where you are basically, if you're doing shadow work and you're consciously doing shadow work, you'll notice that you'll have certain experiences in those dreams to show you aspects of yourself, because the dreams are nothing but aspects of yourself. The fairies were an aspect of myself. Jesus was an aspect of myself. Whatever it may be that your experience is an aspect of yourself. So there's times where when I was in my 20s, I had jobs where I was working so much because I wanted to buy a certain thing for myself, like a car or something, that I would actually go to bed thinking I'm still working. That I was working overtime and whatnot, and doing all these hours that I fucking dreamt that I was still fucking working. You know what I'm saying? But then the law of correspondence, your ego tends to do this. You'll correlate it if it's something that's divine, and you'll tie that to Jesus Christ, and then it'll solidify your experience in that. You know what I'm saying? When you're a child, you get taught about Jesus Christ, and all of a sudden some people may grow up with no experiences, but they'll be diehard religious zealots only because it's just ingrained in them, and they have the religious mindset already ingrained in them, and that they'll just go around being very religious. Now you'll have it's like when somebody tells you, hey, cancer runs in the family. That's a mind virus that gets implanted in you, right? Now all of a sudden you grow up, but you're eating the same foods that cause your family members cancer. So now you may end up with a recipe for disaster, because the foods that your parents eat that causes cancer, plus the belief that you have that it runs in your family, you're more than likely to experience it. Plus scenarios in your life, you may actually be a temperamental motherfucker, that you may have inflammatory attitudes toward things, people, places, and things outside of you. And let's say, for example, it'd be stress, anger, worries, anxieties, all that are inflammatory actions. And that's why they say stress and anger cause diseases, because they're inflammatory, right? So if you're eating inflammatory foods, you have a inflammatory attitude toward things, plus you're eating inflammatory foods. I mean, that's a triple hitter, a trifecta for a recipe for disaster. You get what I'm saying? So you have to monitor these things with awareness. That's why I keep saying it's all in awareness. Zig, it's all in awareness. You know what I'm saying? And once you become aware of these things, you change them. That's why I say when you know better, you do better, right? You know how many people come and ask me to help them with their health conditions? The first thing I ask them is, how's your diet? And then they say, oh, it's not good. The fact that they're answering me is not good, they know they're not doing good, right? But what do you do in that instance? When you know better, you do better. So once I educate them on the proper protocols to detox their body from the shit that they've been doing, what is their job? I can motivate them all day, but what is their job? Their job is to have discipline toward the information that I gave them, right? So I'm not really healing them. I gave them the tools. They're going to utilize those tools and heal themselves, but it's going to take discipline. They're going to go against the grain from what their body originally knows how to do. You get what I'm saying? All versions of you exist. It's just that you're only very well aware of this one. That's it. It's because you're that aware and your attention is fully ingrained in this one. If you want to go to another planet, then you go to another planet the exact same way that I went and visited the fairy kingdom and saw a fairy, right? Or the same way that somebody had an experience with Jesus Christ. We're all Jesus Christ, we're all the fairies, and we're all these planets, right? I've talked about this in so many videos. It's always going to all come back to you. The power is always in your hands. See, here's the whole thing, though. Somebody could tell you, hey, to do shadow work or to do this, to do that, they're going to give you protocols, or they may give you a ritual. You'll follow that ritual, right? The fact that you're following a protocol or a ritual, don't forget, you're giving energy to that individual because you put your belief and attention toward the ritual that person designed for you. It's like a personal trainer. But at the end of the day, you're still empowering yourself, utilizing those tools, right? You're not just giving your power away. That's the law of reciprocity. Like if I give you a ritual to do, you follow my ritual, you gave me energy, right? With attention and belief in the ritual, but you're still going to utilize it to help yourself. And when you help yourself, you empowered yourself. But if you do it and you get nothing out of it because you decided to have no discipline, first of all, you're Christ. The word disciples came from the word discipline. But you can have disciples toward the negative aspect of things or the positive side of things. Either way you put it, you'll still have disciples. You have disciples toward the laziness. They'll just keep following you along and catering to your laziness. You're the leader. You're the God. So if you're lazy, they'll just be disciples to keep feeding you all of your laziness, virtues, and principles to keep you in that state. But when you become aware, then you fire those disciples and you hire new disciples, and then you have new disciplines towards certain new practices. Duh. We'll talk soon.